Hello and welcome. I'm Sam Califer, your host for Vision, the show all about the College of Arts and Sciences. Today I'm with Dr. Adam Skarke. He is a professor in the Department of Geosciences, and this fall he's going to embark on a research trip where he and a graduate student are going to spend almost an entire month offshore in the North Atlantic Ocean to study deep sea carbon-emitting vents. So I wanted to have him on to learn about his research and about that upcoming trip. So Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is such a cool, I'm excited about this conversation. We were just talking about the field work, and I'm like from the English department, so the only places we're ever going is like a library.
Right.
But you're about to embark on this really cool trip, and so yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. But just to start, I always like to ask faculty, just how did you first get into geology, and maybe more specifically the marine geology?
Sure, that's a great question. Going back to my childhood, I was always sort of captivated by the ocean and the idea of marine science. But I wasn't especially into marine biology or sharks and whales, and I sort of going through school and then college discovered the geology, the discipline of studying the earth and the processes on the earth. And what really captivated me was sort of this realization that 72% of the earth is underneath the ocean. And so when we talk about studying geology and we're studying how mountains form or canyons or volcanoes or all these things that shape our planet, you realize that a vast majority of them are underwater. And we really haven't had the opportunity to explore them or learn nearly as much about them as the ones on land. And so that's what really drew me to sort of this idea of marine geology, was that you could do all this sort of science on these places that we really are still today exploring, that we don't know a lot about.
Yeah, definitely. I think geology is one of those things that everyone starts to like, learning about the different layers of the earth. Sure. And what that teaches you. But yeah, the marine geology is so cool because, like you said, like we have not really explored a lot of the ocean, and so it's like an alien world out there, and so you're getting to be out there and study it. So cool. And so you're about to really get hands-on doing some study. And so I won't, if you could like catch me up some. So this is part of a larger research project. It's a $3 million National Science Foundation project.
Correct.
So yeah, like what's going on with the project? Are there any other scientists you're working with? And what is like the goal of it overall?
Sure, I can give you a little bit of background on it. I guess to kind of go back a little ways, I've been a faculty member in geosciences at Mississippi State for about 12 years. And it was about 12 years ago that I was leading some work where we ended up discovering these locations on the seafloor in the Atlantic Ocean where natural gas, methane, was bubbling up out of the seafloor into the ocean. And this was a bit of a surprise because this was an area where we didn't really expect this to be happening. And back then we identified maybe a few hundred locations where this was happening, which was a pretty surprising because before that we only knew of maybe 2 or 3. Since then, we've been working, myself and colleagues and students, and we've come to learn that now there's many, many, many thousands of locations right along the east coast of the United States, maybe 80, 100 miles offshore, where between sort of the Carolinas and New England, where we've got all this natural gas coming out of the seafloor. And so, as I said earlier, we haven't explored much of the ocean. We haven't actually gone and looked there. And so this was a surprising thing to find. And as a geologist, I'm very interested in understanding, well, where is this gas coming from? Why is it coming out? Where does it ultimately end up? And I've joined with a number of colleagues. I've got colleagues on this particular project that are from the University of Georgia, Texas A&M University, University of Delaware. And they bring a lot of expertise in areas that are complementary to the sort of geological and geophysical work I do. So there's some expertise in biology and chemistry. And so we've joined together to really say, well, we have these sort of mysterious geological features out there. We think we know some things about them, but there's a lot more we'd really like to know about the organisms that live there, about what this gas coming out of the seafloor means for the health of our oceans and maybe even our atmosphere and climate. And so that's what really motivated this research and our grant project to the National Science Foundation. And so once that was awarded, a big part of that was we really have to go to these locations and take samples and make observations and do mapping and all those things to really understand what's happening at the seafloor, underneath the seafloor, up above the seafloor in the ocean. And so that's the focus of this cruise. And 2 previous ones that we've completed on this project, and another one we'll complete next year, is to take a suite of samples to really bring together the bigger picture of how these features work and what they're all about.
Yeah, I love that. Like anytime I hear about a big research project like that, it's people from different disciplines, and the kind of information that y'all can synthesize together is so much greater than just one of you, and so that's how those big research projects look so often. But you maybe get the fun part of it because you're the adventure side of it.
That's right.
It seems like something that would be like in an action movie. So because you're going in the submersible, you're going down to the floor to look at these carbon-emitting vents. And you talked about it a little bit, but yeah, what would you say, like, what are you trying to figure out about it? What's the importance of it?
Sure, that's a great question. I think what's important is maybe think about kind of, well, why would we care about? We've got these vents on the seafloor. We know that lots of natural gas is coming out. Why would that matter to us? Well, there's a few different reasons. I think one of the key reasons is that, as you mentioned, the gas coming out is methane, and that's mostly composed of carbon. And we care about carbon because we've probably heard of things like greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. That's carbon dioxide. Turns out methane also has carbon in it, which is a greenhouse gas, and it's about 25 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So when we start to recognize that there are thousands of locations on Earth where this gas is coming out that we didn't previously know about, then a big question for us is, well, where's it coming from? But then where's it going? Where does it ultimately end up? Does this have implications? Is this methane going to enter our atmosphere and have implications for that? What is it doing when it gets into the water? And beyond sort of this piece about carbon and the climate, there's other things we think about. Somewhat from the biological side, where this gas comes out of the seafloor, we find hot spots of life. So the deep ocean, if you go there, oftentimes in many places seems there's living things there, but in a lot of places it seems like sort of flat, muddy areas, not really compelling like a coral reef or something like that. But then you go to these sites where gas is coming out, and there's these ecosystems that exist in complete darkness. They're forever. There's never light there. But what develops is these robust ecosystems, and you get these rocky outcroppings that are formed by microbes, and you get lobsters, crabs, shrimp. We mentioned sharks earlier when we were talking. You get these ecosystems of life that develop in complete darkness. And so there's a biological piece there where I have colleagues who are very interested in understanding, well, how did this come to be? And do all these thousands of locations have these hot spots of life? And what does that mean for sort of marine biology in the deep sea and our understanding of how abundant organisms are and where we might find them? There's another piece about biology too, in that this methane, when it comes out of the seafloor, it can, usually by bacteria in the water, get converted to carbon dioxide through a chemical reaction. And the reason we care about that is when that happens, that reaction consumes oxygen and it leads to producing carbon dioxide, which can make the ocean more acidic. And the reason we care about that is many things in the ocean need oxygen to survive. They respire oxygen. But additionally, many things in the ocean have shells, including these plankton, microplankton, that produce a lot of the oxygen we breathe. They have very delicate shells, and as the ocean becomes more acidic, those shells become less viable, and that can mean that those organisms that produce oxygen are not as common. And so we also want to understand, where all this gas coming out, well, what's happening to it? What's its fate? Is it contributing a lot to acidifying the ocean and deoxygenating the ocean? Because then what could that mean for these organisms that produce the air we breathe, or the fish that live in the ocean? And I think less for the specific location we're going to, but another kind of piece of this is that in some parts of the world, they've used this gas for energy. So they've actually gone out, collected it, harvested it, put it into production. And methane is if you have a natural gas stove in your house or a hot water heater, methane is the gas that you're burning there. So in other parts of the world, they've collected this gas and used it as an energy resource. So for all these reasons, the questions we really want to answer is, where does the gas come from? How long has it been coming out? How much is coming out?
Yeah.
How abundant is it globally? If we went from thinking there were 3 spots in this location to many, many thousands, is that the case for lots of margins on Earth? So for all these reasons, we really want to understand the system because we want to understand what it means for the health of our oceans, our atmosphere, potentially for resources. And so that's what's driving a lot of the work we're doing and the questions we want to answer.
Yeah. Hearing you talk, I think it, like kind of growing up and learning about science, I had this misconception that like we've been everywhere and we figured everything out. And that's kind of what I'm hearing is the opposite. Like we obviously hadn't been to the bottom of the ocean. And for you to figure out it's not just 1 or 2, it's like thousands and the far reaching effects it could have. And something else about geology is like the Earth has its own systems. Like you know, we think of animals as an organism, but like the planet kind of has its systems of equilibrium and cycles, and so that's kind of what you figure out. Where is this methane coming from, and what does it do for everything? So yeah, just so interesting. And what would you say, this is your third one, your third trip down that you're about to go on. How has your understanding changed, would you say?
You know, I think in general, our understanding of this environment has changed sort of in the ways I mentioned, that these things are so much more abundant than we previously thought. They also, I think our understanding of these systems has changed in terms, for me as marine geologist, and in thinking about the source of this gas. You know, we sort of had some conventional ideas about where the gas was coming from. We thought, very shallow microbes were consuming carbon and producing methane in just a few top meters of the seafloor. And I think what we're learning through these expeditions so far is that that might not always be the case. And in fact, there might be deeper sources of oil in this region or not oil, but gas in this region that could be feeding into these systems as well. That's still to be determined, but that's our thinking on that's kind of evolved throughout this project.
Yeah.
It's giving us new insights into where some of this may be coming from.
And just how far it goes, like what's all involved. Okay, we have about 45 seconds.
Sure.
I gotta hear, what is it like to get in this submersible and go to the ocean floor on a personal level, would you say? What makes you follow through and do it?
Sure. Well, I think it's what you mentioned before, which is that for me, on a personal level, it is an incredible privilege to get to go where no one's been before and see things no one's seen before.
Yeah.
And we know that we've only mapped about a quarter of the ocean, and we only have pictures or video of a tiny fraction of 1% of the ocean. So the opportunity to go out there and to be able to go down and collect these samples, take these images, explore where no one's been is an incredible privilege. And for me, a very exciting part of the science I do is sort of that adventure of being able to collect those data that we'll use to answer these questions.
Yeah. It's like your whole career was leading up to it. And so how could you not go get on that submersible? So
Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sam.
So cool to talk to you. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Vision. We'll see you next time.